Hello, it's Toaster Party, and today I'm going to be talking about which cards are the best reprints for Double Masters 2 for CEDH so far. So there have been a lot of reprints that have been announced so far for Double Masters 2, and some of them have been quite huge for people who want to have paper copies of cards for CEDH, and for a lot of other formats as well, because there have been a lot of really good reprints in this set so far. But today we're just going to be talking about the good ones for CEDH. So let's start off with Allosaurus Shepherd. This is a card that is really powerful in low-color green decks, because it basically prevents all your stuff from being countered. It has a second effect on it aside from your green spells can't be countered and that it can't be countered, but I don't think I've ever seen that one get used outside of Arena. But this is a really good reprint for people who are putting together like paper Selvala, because this card was really expensive upon release, and it kind of stayed up there because its only printing was in Jumpstart, a set where you are very unlikely to pull this card. But now that it's being reprinted in a set where the ratios aren't so skewed, a lot more people will have access to it, and it'll definitely be a lot more affordable. Up next, Bloom Tender. This one suffers from a similar issue to Allosaurus Shepherd, except the difference being instead of being printed in Jumpstart, it was printed all the way back in like Eventide, and all of its reprints have been in stuff like Secret Lairs, and I think there was a Mystery Booster printing. But again, it hasn't been printed in a very long time in a way that is going to get copies into the market. It's all been just like limited run stuff. This card is really good in high color decks that need mana ramp, because it's also a combo enabler for stuff like Najeela, because it can then tap for 5 mana to initiate extra combat steps. Up next we have Dockside Extortionist, probably the second biggest reprint of this set, but for casual players it's probably the biggest one. This was printed back in the 2019 Commander decks and is probably one of the most played cards in CEDH, and probably one of the most powerful win conditions as well, because Dockside Extortionist is a card that is very fine-tuned to being really powerful and exclusively Commander because of how much artifact and enchantment ramp people tend to run. It's good to see this card getting reprinted because a lot of people didn't have the opportunity to pick up the 2019 Commander deck because they either just joined later or just it fell off the market really fast. So this one is really good for them. Up next we have Cavern of Souls, good for very niche tribal CEDH Commander decks. Stuff like Selvala probably would want something like this to prevent the commander from being countered, or like Marwyn, because all the stuff is elves. Grixis Malcolm used to want this card, but that was back when Hull Breacher was legal, because then you could have an uncounterable Hull Breacher. Up next we have Kozilek Butcher of Truth. This card is really good in Atla and the Gitrog monster, and it was climbing up in price to about the $90 mark at one point, but I believe it dropped down to about the $50 or $60 mark. This card is really good for those two specific decks, and having a new paper printing of it means that we're going to probably see a lot more people running them, because specifically the Gitrog monster is extremely cheap, aside from the Shuffle Titans, if you want to run a decent budget CEDH build of it. So seeing this reprint is really nice. Probably the least important CEDH card here is Mizzix of the Ismagnus. It's a commander that sometimes sees CEDH play. I haven't really seen if it's been putting up any results recently, but it is something that people have built around in the past. But it was climbing up there in price, so it's really nice to see it get a reprint so that it doesn't get too inaccessible like other face commanders in the past, like Edgar Markov currently has. Up next, we have Mana Vault, a really, really good mana rock in CEDH. one of those cards that is pretty much in every single CEDH deck possible, because it's basically a dark ritual for any other color, and it's mana positive rock, basically. And if you can untap it without having to pay the mana, that's also really nice. But let's move on to the biggest reprint of this entire set. Imperial Seal. This card was moving to about the $1,000 mark, and was the most expensive card in Magic the Gathering that was not on the reserve list. So it's really nice to be able to finally be able to get this card in paper for a reasonable price. So no longer need to be using printer paper to get your Imperial Seals. You can just hopefully open one, but it shouldn't be too expensive on the market, because a lot of this set is probably going to get opened. And let's move on to the final cards. We have Sensei's Divining Top, a card that sees a lot of CEDH play and a lot of decks because, hey, it's consistency booster, and also it's a combo card in a lot of different strategies, such as Keurig. We also have Weathered Wayfarer, a card that is probably one of the cheapest cards on this list. It was sitting around $13, $14. But even then, it's still a really good card for mono white, because it allows you to search up any single land in your deck and put it to your hand, as long as your opponent controls more lands than you. Mono white needs all the help that it can get, and being able to get this card for cheaper for a lot of players is going to be really nice. And finally, Phyrexian Altar. A card that a lot of people wouldn't spend the money on because it was about somewhere between $70 and $90 for a good long while. And this kind of effect is powerful, but not so powerful that people would want to put that kind of money on it, especially when there's not a lot of decks that really want it. One that I knew played it for a while was Mono Red Dargo with Jessica, because it was basically an infinite mana outlet with Dargo, where you could constantly sack and replay it over and over and over again. Then you could just cast Jessica and it would have 1 million loyalty on it. But seeing this card having a rare reprint of all things is going to be really nice. Well, thank you all for watching. Hope you leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you all have an excellent day.